At precisely 11:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, the polished mahogany doors of Penmar Industries' executive boardroom burst open. The 23 members of the leadership team, all pristine suits, all confident smirks, turned in unison as a figure stepped inside. Alma Weatherford, 68 years old, stood in the doorway wearing her faded blue janitor's uniform, her weathered hands clutching a manila envelope. Her silver hair was pulled back in the same neat bun she'd worn for 3 decades, her posture straight despite the weight of years spent bending over mop buckets and scrubbing floors. The laughter started immediately. Well, drawled CEO Clovis Penmar, his Harvard MBA practically radiating from his tailored Italian suit. Looks like someone took a wrong turn. The supply closet is 2 floors down, sweetheart. The room erupted. Vice President Floyd Beringer slapped the table, tears streaming down his face. Did she think this was the janitors' union meeting? More laughter. Someone made a joke about GPS systems for cleaning ladies. But Alma didn't flinch. She walked forward with measured steps, her worn sneakers silent on the plush carpet that she had vacuumed countless times. She reached the head of the conference table where Clovis sat like a king on his throne, and without a word she slid the manila envelope across the polished surface. "What's this supposed to?" Clovis began, but his voice died as he opened the envelope and saw the letterhead. Sterling Legal Group. His fingers trembled slightly as he pulled out the document inside. Share certificate, Penmar Industries. Majority stockholder, Alma Weatherford, 51% ownership. The laughter stopped like someone had cut the power. Now, before we continue this incredible story, I have to ask, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments because what happens next will shock people from every corner of America. And if you're enjoying this story of justice being served, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode features another underdog victory you absolutely cannot miss. 35 years earlier, Alma Weatherford had stood in a very different room. Fresh out of Georgia Tech with a mechanical engineering degree, she clutched her portfolio of designs and innovations, hope burning bright in her 23-year-old heart. "I'm sorry, miss," the interviewer had said, not even looking at her credentials. "We're looking for someone who fits our company culture better." It was 1987. Company culture was code for not you. Rejection after rejection followed. 23 interviews. 23 polite dismissals. Her engineering degree might as well have been toilet paper for all the doors it opened for a young black woman in corporate America. But Alma had something more valuable than a degree. She had vision. And when she heard about a struggling startup called Penmar Industries, founded by an ambitious young entrepreneur named Thomas Penmar, she saw opportunity where others saw risk. Thomas was brilliant but broke. His revolutionary water filtration technology could change the world, but he couldn't get funding. Banks wouldn't touch him. Investors wanted proven track records he didn't have. That's when Alma made the decision that would change everything. She liquidated her entire life savings, $47,000 earned from working 3 jobs through college, and offered it to Thomas, not as a loan, as an investment. In exchange for majority ownership of his fledgling company, Thomas was desperate enough to say yes, but they both knew the truth. In 1987, a water filtration company co-founded by a young black woman would face an uphill battle that might prove insurmountable. So they made an agreement. Thomas would be the face of Penmar Industries, while Alma would remain in the background watching over her investment. To stay close to the company, she accepted a position in the janitorial staff. It gave her access to every floor, every office, every conversation. She could monitor her investment while remaining invisible to a world that wasn't ready to see her as an equal partner. Years passed. Thomas's technology took off. Penmar Industries grew from a basement startup to a mid-sized corporation to a major player in the environmental industry. Alma watched it all, proud of what they had built together, content to remain in the shadows. Then Thomas died unexpectedly in a car accident. His son Clovis inherited operational control of the company, but knew nothing about the original ownership agreement. Alma considered stepping forward then, but Clovis was young, grieving, and she hoped he might grow into the leader his father had been. Instead, she watched in horror as Clovis systematically dismantled everything his father had built. The company's mission shifted from environmental innovation to pure profit, Employee benefits were slashed. The research division was gutted. Corners were cut on safety and quality, and now, overhearing the final insult, plans to lay off 400 employees to pad executive bonuses, Alma had finally had enough. The trouble was, Clovis and his team were just days away from implementing their plan. 400 families would lose their livelihoods to fund lavish compensation packages for executives who had contributed nothing to the company's success. Time was running out. Alma had always been thorough. It came from her engineering background. Measure twice, cut once. So before she made her move, she decided to gather evidence. For weeks she had been using her unique access as a janitor to document everything. While emptying wastebaskets in executive offices, she photographed discarded memos. While cleaning conference rooms after late-night meetings, she recorded conversations on her old flip phone. While mopping floors in the accounting department, she observed irregularities that would make a forensic accountant's head spin. What she discovered was worse than she had imagined. The layoffs were just the beginning. Clovis and his inner circle, Vice President Floyd Beringer, CFO Oswald Merton, and Head of Operations Maud Tilling, had been systematically looting the company for years. Senior reports for luxury vacations charged as business travel, consulting fees paid to shell companies owned by their relatives, equipment purchases that never materialized, even pension fund contributions that had been diverted to offshore accounts. But the smoking gun was hidden in the basement archives, in boxes that hadn't been touched in years. Original contracts from the company's founding days, board meeting minutes that had never been officially filed, and most damning of all, evidence that Clovis knew about Alma's ownership stake, but had been actively concealing it from auditors and shareholders. The young IT specialist, Lucretia Boone, had been helping Alma access digital records. At first, Lucretia thought she was just helping a curious janitor understand the company better, but as the evidence mounted, she realized she was witnessing something extraordinary. "Mrs. Weatherford," Lucretia whispered one evening as they reviewed files in the empty server room, "they're planning to wipe these archives next week." Clovis ordered a complete data purge of all pre-2010 records. Alma's blood ran cold. They were trying to destroy the evidence of her ownership. But more than that, they were trying to erase the history of what Penmar Industries had once been. The trouble was escalating. She was running out of time to expose the truth before it was buried forever. Back in the present moment, the boardroom remained frozen in stunned silence. Clovis stared at the share certificate like it was a snake that had materialized on his conference table. This has to be fake," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. The legal letterhead was authentic. The signatures were real. The corporate seal was legitimate. Alma reached into her uniform pocket and placed additional documents on the table. Corporate filing receipts, CLC registration forms, bank records showing her initial investment, a notarized letter from Thomas Penmar himself, written just months before his death, acknowledging her ownership and expressing his gratitude for her partnership. Floyd Beringer grabbed one of the documents, his face growing pale as he read. "Even if this is real," he said desperately, "it's from decades ago. Surely there have been corporate restructurings, dilutions. Every restructuring preserved the original ownership percentages." Alma replied calmly, "I made sure of that. I've been watching this company for 35 years, Mr. Beringer. I know exactly what's happened to my investment." She turned to address the full room. "As majority shareholder of Penmar Industries, I am hereby suspending the current management team pending a full audit of corporate finances. The planned layoffs are canceled immediately. And Mr. Penmar," she looked directly at Clovis, "you're fired." The room exploded into chaos. Executives shouted over each other. Phones were pulled out to call lawyers. Someone mentioned security. But through it all, Alma stood perfectly still, her dignity intact after 3 decades of being invisible. The twist that sealed their fate came when Martha Donovan, the longest-serving board member, slowly raised her hand, all in favor of recognizing Mrs. Weatherford's ownership claim and supporting her actions. One by one, hands rose around the table. Not all of them. Clovis's closest allies remained defiant, but enough to constitute a clear majority. The vote was official. Alma Weatherford was now the controlling owner and acting CEO of Penmar Industries. But as the meeting dissolved into pandemonium and Clovis stormed out, his parting words carried an ominous promise. "This isn't over, old woman. You have no idea what you've just started." The trouble was far from finished. In fact, it was about to get much worse. Within 48 hours, Clovis Penmar had declared total war. He started by calling an emergency press conference, surrounded by expensive lawyers and public relations specialists. "Penmar Industries has been the victim of a hostile takeover," he announced to the gathered media. "An elderly janitor with questionable documentation has illegally seized control of a publicly traded company, putting thousands of jobs and millions in shareholder value at risk." The story went viral. Cable news programs picked it up. Social media exploded with hot takes about diversity gone wrong and reverse discrimination. The stock price plummeted as uncertainty gripped the market, but Clovis wasn't finished. He filed lawsuits challenging Alma's ownership. He lobbied the board members who had supported her, offering lucrative consulting contracts if they changed their votes. He even went so far as to contact Penmar's biggest clients, suggesting they might want to reconsider their contracts given the instability in leadership. The most devastating blow came when employees started arriving to work only to find their access cards deactivated. Clovis had used his remaining connections to freeze the company's operational accounts, claiming it was necessary to protect shareholder assets during the ownership dispute. Alma stood in the empty lobby of Penmar Industries, watching her employees gather outside the locked doors, confusion and fear etched on their faces. Some had worked here for 20 years. Others had just started families and depended on their paychecks to pay mortgages and medical bills. "What do we do?" asked Lucretia, who had become Alma's unofficial technology advisor. "The accounts are frozen. Payroll is locked. We can't even access our own servers." That's when Alma made a decision that would either save the company or destroy her financially. She mortgaged her house. She liquidated her retirement savings. She called in every favor from her decades of community connections. Within 72 hours, she had assembled enough capital to meet payroll out of her own pocket. The twist that changed everything came when her IT team discovered something horrifying hidden in the company's servers. Clovis and his allies had installed a digital kill switch, malicious code designed to wipe out decades of customer data, research files, and operational records if they lost control of the company. It was corporate sabotage on an unprecedented scale. If activated, it would destroy Penmar Industries completely, ensuring that if Clovis couldn't have the company, nobody could. But the virus was still there, hidden in the system like a ticking time bomb. And worse, the person who could activate it was still inside the company, unknown and dangerous. Alma realized she wasn't just fighting for control of her company anymore. She was fighting for its very survival. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Jake Wilson, a junior accountant who had been documenting financial irregularities for months, approached Alma with a flash drive containing explosive evidence. Bank statements showing the offshore accounts, email exchanges discussing the data purge, audio recordings of executive meetings where they explicitly discussed covering up the ownership fraud. "I've been collecting this for over a year," Jake explained nervously. "I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how deep it went until you stepped forward." Armed with irrefutable proof of embezzlement, fraud, and corporate sabotage, Alma contacted federal investigators. Within days, FBI agents were executing search warrants on executive offices and seizing computer equipment. The arrests began that Friday morning. Clovis was taken into custody at his country club, still wearing his golf attire when the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Floyd Beringer was arrested at the airport, apparently attempting to flee to a non-extradition country. Oswald Merton was found in his office, frantically trying to delete files that had already been backed up by federal investigators. But the most satisfying moment came when Alma called an emergency all-hands meeting to address the company's employees. The auditorium was packed. Rumors had been flying for days, and everyone was desperate for answers. When Alma took the stage, no longer in her janitor's uniform but wearing a simple, dignified business suit, the room fell silent. "3 days ago, some of you may have seen news reports questioning my legitimacy as your leader," she began. Today I want to share some news that puts those questions to rest. She outlined the federal investigation, the arrests, and the evidence of systematic fraud that had been uncovered. But more importantly, she outlined her vision for Penmar Industries moving forward. No layoffs, no budget cuts for essential services, no more treating employees like disposable resources to be optimized for quarterly profits. The applause started slowly but built to a thunderous crescendo. The twist that sealed her vindication came in the form of a manila envelope delivered by courier during the meeting. Inside was a letter from the original company founder, Thomas Penmar, discovered in his personal effects that had been stored in his estate lawyer's vault. The letter, written shortly before his death but never delivered, was addressed to the Penmar Industries Board of Directors. In it, Thomas explicitly acknowledged Alma's ownership stake and described her as the true architect of everything this company has achieved. If something happens to me, the letter read, I trust that Alma Weatherford will have the wisdom and integrity to guide Penmar Industries into the future. She has been my silent partner and closest advisor for decades. This company belongs to her as much as it belongs to me. As Alma read the letter aloud, there wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium, but even in victory, trouble loomed. Clovis's legal team was preparing appeals, shareholders were threatening lawsuits, and the media circus showed no signs of abating. The final battle for Penmar Industries was about to begin. 6 months later, Penmar Industries was thriving like never before. The company's stock price had not only recovered, but reached historic highs as investors recognized the value of ethical leadership and long-term thinking. Employee satisfaction surveys showed record-breaking results. Customer retention had improved dramatically as quality control standards were restored. Alma had restructured the entire organization around the principles she and Thomas had originally envisioned. Profit-sharing programs ensured that success was shared with every employee. The research and development budget was doubled, leading to breakthrough innovations in water purification technology. Environmental sustainability became the company's core mission, not just a marketing slogan, but perhaps the most meaningful change was in the janitorial department. Alma had established the Thomas Penmar Education Fund, providing full college scholarships for children of Penmar employees who wanted to pursue careers in engineering, environmental science, or business. The first recipient was Maria Santos, a young woman whose mother worked in the company's custodial staff. Mrs. Weatherford, Maria said at the scholarship ceremony, "My mom always told me to work hard and dream big, but she never imagined her daughter could become an engineer. Thank you for showing us that invisible doesn't mean powerless." As Alma watched Maria accept her scholarship check, she thought about the young woman she had once been: brilliant, ambitious, and systematically denied opportunities because of how others chose to see her. The most poetic twist came during the annual board meeting, exactly 1 year after her dramatic boardroom entrance. A new member had joined the custodial staff, a recent immigrant with an advanced degree in chemistry, who couldn't find work in his field due to language barriers and lack of American credentials. After the meeting, Alma approached him. "Carlos, I noticed you've been working here for 3 months. How do you like it?" "It's good work, Mrs. Weatherford," he replied in accented English. "I am grateful for the opportunity. What did you study in your home country?" His eyes lit up. "Chemical engineering. I specialized in industrial water treatment systems." Alma smiled. "Carlos, I'd like you to meet our head of research and development. I have a feeling you two should talk." As she walked away, leaving Carlos in animated conversation with the R&D director about polymer filtration techniques, Alma reflected on the journey that had brought her here. "They saw a cleaner," she murmured to herself. "They never saw the architect. But while I mopped their floors, I was building something they could never take from me." The company she had helped create with her life savings 35 years ago now employed over 3,000 people. Its water purification systems operated in 47 countries. Its innovations had provided clean drinking water to millions of people in developing nations. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth: being invisible had never made her powerless. It had just made her underestimated. As the sun set over the Penmar Industries headquarters, the building she had once cleaned but now led, Alma Weatherford stood at her office window, no longer invisible, finally seen for who she had always been: the architect. The visionary. The woman who built it all. Have you ever underestimated someone because of their job title, their age, or their background? Have you ever been underestimated yourself? Share your story in the comments below, because everyone deserves to be seen for who they truly are. If this story moved you, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales of justice, perseverance, and the power of never giving up. Tomorrow we're bringing you another story that will restore your faith in the possibility of change, no matter how impossible the odds may seem. Remember, you never know who might be watching, listening, and waiting for their moment to change everything.